calling all educators with a passion for teaching and a health for faith. Get ready for a transformative journey with the Educators with Oil podcast, where host Ronnette Branham is dedicated to helping teachers become better through biblical strategies.
Good evening, everyone. If you're joining me live, welcome. And if you're listening later, I'm glad that you are here. I'm Ronnette Branham, and this is Educators with Oil podcast, where we teach from identity, not insecurity. Tonight is not about what's wrong. It's about what becomes possible when you teach as your full self. There's a difference between functioning. There's a difference between functioning and flowing. If you've experienced that difference, type in the comments, flow. Because mature educators recognize when something shifts internally. One second here. So the difference between functioning and flowing, functioning, teaching, you deliver lessons, you manage behavior, you follow curriculum, you do what is required. And flowing teaching is your presence is steady, your tone is natural, your authority is unforced. Your classroom feels more aligned with who you are. Both of those, functioning and flowing, they can look competent, but only one feels sustainable. Ecclesiastes 3 reminds us there is there's a season for everything. So sometimes, where am I at? Sometimes heaviness is not dysfunction, it's growth. Growth stretches you before it strengthens you. You've had a season where nothing changed externally, but sometimes you feel matured internally, and that's growth. So if we feel like that, you feel like nothing's changing on the outside, but you feel different on the inside, that's growth. And that is not an accident, that is refinement. So let's restate the order. Remember, we're talking about our framework. There's identity, authority, instruction, impact, and everything flows from that identity. Identity before instruction, we already know that is not motivational language, that's structure. It's structural. So when identity is clear, your authority stabilizes. And when your authority stabilizes, instruction sharpens. Of course, when instruction sharpens, impact multiplies. So we're going from that, it flows through identity. Everything flows through identity. So most educators try to improve instruction first. We're trying to get that in order, but instruction is downstream. Proverbs 43:4-23 says, guard your heart, for everything flows from it. So once you know who you are, everything flows from and identity. Instruction flows from identity. So let me ask you, which area feels the strongest right now? Is it identity, your authority, your instruction, your impact? So we want to respond thoughtfully with that. Awareness is maturity. So if somebody says identity feels the strongest, that's foundational. When identity feels strong, it means you're internally clear, and clarity internally will always produce steadiness externally. Now the work becomes making sure that identity is visible in your authority, because identity that stays internal never transforms instruction. So it has to Your identity has to be expressed externally. You always build from identity first. That's the order. So if you feel the strongest in your authority, you walk in a classroom and you feel like people are sitting up and they're listening to you, right? That's how we feel like authority is. That's maturity. So authority means you are no longer negotiating your presence. You're standing in it. You walk in, people address, the students sit up straight. You already know that. Just remember, authority without anchored identity can become performance. You're walking in performing instead of just walking in your own authority. Authority rooted in identity becomes calm leadership. I remember I had you see principals come in and you watch them come in, and then the students start listening. And then I remember I went to a meeting and there was somebody a little higher up, and he was trying to get everybody's attention, but it was a hard thing for him. It was a hard thing. People were not paying attention. It was just like, okay, come on now. Well, he was like, what do we do in the classroom? How do we get everybody's attention? But it was a hard thing for him. We understood who he was, but that authority or something was a little, I don't know. Sometimes we could feel we could feel you, that intimidation or whatever. And then you're not actually walking in that authority. Then if you type instruction, if you feel like your instruction is your strength, instruction, is strong, tells me the system is working, but instruction again is downstream. The question is it flowing from alignment or effort? When identity and authority are steady, instruction becomes efficient. It stops feeling heavy. It stops feeling heavy. Sometimes we walk in and we're like, we have the students are learning, they're understanding, and it just feels like it's flowing easily. And that happens once everything is aligned. And if you type impact is evidence. It means something is landing in your classroom. But sustainable impact is always supported by identity and authority underneath it. Otherwise, you work too hard to maintain it. So we do want to make sure our students are getting what they came for. We have these objectives and we want to make sure everybody is being reached. So always go back and recenter with that framework. Always go back and remember that identity. Everything flows from your identity, walking in who you are. And if I'm seeing identity, authority, instruction, that tells me that community is growing in layers. Alignment is not always strong in one area. It's about strength across all four. Of course, that's maturity. And if you feel like you're weak in all areas, don't panic. That's honest. We have to be honest in what we feel that we are. Honesty is the beginning of alignment. So remember to start with identity. Always start there. When identity stabilizes, the rest follows. And everything again traces all the way back to identity. Identity before instruction is not a slogan. We're not going to act like it's a slogan. It's structure, and it's the structure of this framework. When the order is right, the weight lifts. And we don't fix weight by working harder. We fix weight by restoring that order. So we want to know, what does teaching from wholeness look like? Teaching from wholeness speaks clearly, set expectations once, does not over apologize, does not shrink, does not inflate, is warm over performing warmth. There's a difference. Is firm without aggression. Proverbs 31 says, she is clothed with strength and dignity. Strength and dignity is not noise and defensiveness. So we want to pause right there. Sometimes we go in the classroom. I'm going to pause right here real quickly. sometimes we go in a classroom and this is how we know if we're walking in that identity or not, right? We're speaking clearly. We're not shrinking. We're not inflating. And, we set expectations one time and our students get it. We walk in the classroom. They understand the order of the classroom. And so we can tell if we're walking in our identity with the authority, with the instruction, everything flowing from that identity, because the classroom is managed, is well managed. A lot of times we have to look at how it's managed, if it's, because we're just strict and stern and there's no impact behind it. But we can tell that we're walking in that authority because it feels at ease. You feel at ease, you feel it flow, the order flowing through you, and not simply you're working so hard and it doesn't feel heavy. Then I said that one more. I just want to know it shouldn't feel heavy. And again, Proverbs 31 says, she is clothed with strength and dignity. Strength and dignity, not noise and defensiveness. Which one do you want to strengthen in this season, strength or dignity? And again, it says she's clothed in strength and dignity. So if it's strength, type strength. If it's dignity, type dignity. Strength tells me that you're ready to stand more firmly. Strength is not volume, it's internal steadiness. Strength says, I will not bend where I should be anchored. Just be careful, because strength without dignity can turn sharp. We could be so tough walking in our strength and we don't have that dignity. We could be tough. That's like if you're walking into a meeting and you're getting your point across, but then you forget that dignity piece. So we're building anchor strength, not armored defense. And we can get there if we forget that Proverbs 31. Strength rooted in identity becomes calm authority. And then if you were to type dignity, that tells me you are guarding your posture. Dignity is composure under pressure. It is resistance without weakness. Dignity says, I will not lose myself trying to manage everything. But remember, dignity without strength can become silence. We're building a dignified presence, not quiet withdrawal. Dignity anchored in identity becomes influence. So then again, if you want to walk in identity and strength and dignity, that's healthy, because again, that's that Proverbs 31 woman who's clothed in both. That means it's visible, it's carried, it's consistent. Strength stabilizes us, dignity regulates us. Together, they protect our authority. In education, we can't afford to strengthen one at the expense of the other. Can't afford to have strength without the dignity. Strength keeps us from collapsing, and dignity keeps us from reacting. That balance is leadership. And if you're not sure, the uncertainty is insight. If you're not sure what you want to walk in, when you cannot name what you need, it usually means you have been operating in survival. Clarity returns back when identity is restored. So we have to go back to that identity. Always go back to that identity. One second. Remember, when identity is clear, strength and dignity are not forced. They fit. And that's the oil. That's the oil that we always say we're walking in. So we know when we're maturing, when we send that email once and we don't send a follow-up email explaining the tone of the email. When you rewrite an email 5 times, you kind of feel a certain type of way. So if you've done that, I would type guilty, right? Alignment in our identity, in our strength, in our dignity and strength, it reduces that over editing, because clarity removes insecurity. Clarity restores that authority. So we don't have to type something and then go back and say, oh, but I meant this, or this is, trying to make it, overthink that email that we sent. The mature question is no longer, am I doing enough? It becomes, am I aligned? I have 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, we have power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind does not wobble easily. So as you tune in, on a scale of 1 to 5, how aligned do you feel in this season? So you're just going to type the number. I'm going to go over those numbers and see. We're not being accusatory. We just want to identify where we are. So no explanation, just the number. If you're committed to strengthening your internal steadiness this semester, type steady. And then we want to talk about, so these are things that help us walk in our in alignment with who we are, because that's what we're talking about. So we want to expand our presence, and performance is exhausting. If you can tell if you're performing. You know how we do when our principals or somebody comes in to observe us. We get in acting mode. We're performing. But we want just our presence to flow, not that performance. Oh, I did this, watch this. They're going to see me check off all these boxes. But that becomes exhaustive. So if we're just walking in our own presence, when they walk in, nothing's going to change, right? Our presence is sustainable. But that performance, that's a lot. Galatians 1:10 asks whether we seek human approval. When you teach from stewardship instead of performance, pressure decreases. So just walk in our identity. We don't feel that pressure. You don't feel like, again, that you have to perform in front of these people observing. Somebody comes in your classroom, or you're performing in front of your students, whoever it is. If you're just walking in your presence, there, you can feel the weight of it. You can feel the difference. So stewardship changes your posture, right? So if you're choosing stewardship this year, you'll notice the difference. We're stewarding over who we are, right? And then we're walking into that, not performing. So you don't perform your calling, you steward your calling. I'm called to be a teacher. You're called to be a teacher. That's what we say all the time. You're called to be this person, this identity, and we steward over it. We don't perform it. Let me go out there and act. Because even actors aren't acting as actors. They're walking in their identity. I am an actor, and they're walking in that. They're not acting as an actor. Instead of asking what's wrong, we ask ourselves, where have I matured? Where am I calmer? Where am I more decisive? Where do I trust myself more? So one thing we could think about as we go through this session, think about this year I've grown in what? I've grown in, and just affirm it thoughtfully. I'm more decisive. I've grown in my decision-making skills. I've matured in getting my lesson plans done and working through those things. So in leadership, so this is the work that I do with educators and leadership, not fixing broken teachers, because we're not walking from brokenness anymore. We understand who we are, why we're here, what we're doing. We're here to educate our students. That's what we're here for. So we're not walking in brokenness. We're standing in our identity, and we're walking in that. And then everything again flows through our identity. So we're strengthening aligned teachers. When identity stabilizes, the morale shifts. If you have more teachers who are confident in who they are, morale is changing. You're not walking around people who are disgruntled employees about leadership. So the instruction tightens. If you know who you are, you walk in your classroom and you just execute those lessons. And leadership conversations improve. We're not bad mouthing our leadership because we are walking in who we are. We don't even have to worry about what happens with the admin. Admin is changing this or changing that. We don't even have to worry about all the things that are changing because we're walking in identity. We're going in and executing. I have to educate my students. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to educate my students. I want to follow the curriculum. And if I need to add some things to it or take some things out, that's what we're going to do. So if you are a leadership and you recognize capable educators who need alignment, conversations, again, I'm here for that. Remember, identity before instruction is the work that we do internally. This is and that was so before we close, that's a very short episode. So if you're committed to teaching as your full self, type full, not fragmented, not performing, not shrinking, but full. You don't need reinvention. You need recognition. When identity is anchored, authority is steady, instruction is clean, impact flows. And that is following that framework. And the maturity carries the oil, right? So again, that was a pretty short little workshop today. I'm going to go back and reiterate the things that we need in order for us to walk in our identity and what flows through our identity. So what flows through our identity again is our identity, knowing who we are. Authority comes out of that identity, walking in that authority. And through that authority, we're walking in our strength and in dignity. And then our instruction is more, it flows. It's less weighty. We just walk in, and then because it's less weighty, the students are impacted. We have a great impact on our students. Students are learning. The objectives are clear, and we can go back and see students will be able to, and then we find out our students are actually able to because we made an impact. We may not make an impact every day, but as we go into small group and things like that we see the impact. We finally see this student is learning how to read. This student is learning how to multiply, and they're gaining it because we're walking in our identity, and that authority and instruction, it all flows again. So if you have any questions on that, you can type questions inside of the comment section and let me know. So with that, I'm going to let you go. And again, if you remember to like, share, and subscribe. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And also, I have a QR code for you to stay connected. For you to stay connected. And if you scan that QR code, then you can stay connected. And I can send you outlines. I can send you companion guides for every episode. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining me and have a great rest of your day.
Subscribe to Educators with Oil podcast on your preferred platform and join Ronnette on this mission to empower teachers through the wisdom of the Bible. Because when biblical strategies meet the classroom, extraordinary teaching happens.
Educators, let's shine a light on our classrooms. See you on Educators with Oil podcast
where teaching and faith unite.